Chapter 9. Pray for the Improbable. In 2012 through 2014, California went through a very dry spell. California's 2013-2014 rainfall was the worst, with only 7.38 inches in the entire year, 15.13 inches below average. It was the driest calendar year on record. We moved to Folsom, California in April 2015, and the levels of Folsom Lake, which is one of California's largest reservoirs, was pretty low. I knew that one of my tasks when moving here was to pray for rain in California. I felt it was an imperative that people of faith pray for the impossible, even for the ending of a long-lasting drought. I went to the lake almost daily and prayed for God to send rain. I prayed for the water to flow in and fill the lake to the top. I began to build a stone memorial there. I wanted to remember the place where I prayed. I prayed that the stone monument would be covered with water. My kids would also come out to the lake with me and pray for rain. We would gather around the stone monument and pray together as a family. I was teaching my children to pray for the impossible and not to be limited in their understanding of God's power to answered prayer. I kept thinking of Elijah praying for rain in the book of 1 Kings 18. I wasn't sure if I was nuts believing that this prayer would have any effect on the situation. I prayed through the fall and into the summer, and not a drop of rain fell. Then one afternoon a thunderstorm came with such a deluge that people were literally kayaking in the streets in one neighborhood. It was only a flash flood, and was barely a drop in the bucket compared to what was needed in all of California. After that one rainfall, months went by without a drop of rain falling, but I kept praying. By the end of the summer, Folsom Lake's levels were so low you could walk out to the middle of the lake where the water would be 100 feet deep if the reservoir were full. The old, inundated town of Mormon Island was visible, and you could see ruins of houses and many artifacts from before the time Folsom Lake was a reservoir. But I kept praying. Perhaps you know the story already. That winter of 2015-2016, it rained so much. It was the third wettest winter on record. And if that wasn't amazing enough, the next winter of 16 and 17 was the wettest winter since records began being kept. In places in the mountains, it snowed more than 29 feet, holding a storehouse of water that would take all the way through 2017 to melt. Folsom Lake was so full that they had to let water out of the dam at a rate of more than 60,000 cubic feet per second to prevent flooding. The quiet American River flowing through Folsom, that normally is so calm your child could swim in it, turned into a raging rapids flowing at 40 miles per hour. The town of Oroville, California was at risk of the dam breaking because of the massive surge of snow melting. People were evacuated for a period of time, but thankfully, the dam held. I was reluctant to write this story because I didn't want people to think I'm saying that it's because of my prayers that this amazing turn of events took place. I do know now that many others were praying too. My point in telling the story is to believe God for the impossible, the improbable, and the unlikely. That's the way all of the men of God in the Bible, whose prayers were notably written down, prayed. They were bold, praying for the sun to stand still, Joshua 10, marching around Jericho so that the walls would fall, Joshua 5, telling the lame man to get up and walk, Acts 3:1, and the list goes on. My kids were understanding it too. My son Jacob said to me one day, "Dad, it hasn't rained in a while. Did you stop praying?" He was right. I had stopped praying. I remember one time during the beginning of my prayer journey when I just started seeing frequent answers to prayer. It was a Wednesday at our church and a huge community outreach event was planned. We had so many things planned for that Wednesday night, all of it outside. People were coming from all over the community to attend this event. About an hour before the event, an absolutely massive thunderstorm was heading down from Charleston straight towards Beaufort. On the radar, it was one of the largest thunderstorms I had ever seen. Its arrival in Beaufort was going to be pretty much the same time as the start of the event. What I did next was the boldest thing I had ever done in my prayer life up until that point. I remembered the story of Mark 4:35-40, which reads, "On that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, 'Let's go across to the other side.' And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. And they woke him and said, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, 'Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?'" After having spent so many hours in God's presence the past several months, my faith that I could do the same things Jesus did was pretty high. After all, Jesus said in Matthew 17:20, Truly I say unto you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. So I stood outside the church looking at the huge storm that was coming towards us, pointed at it, and shouted, in the name of Jesus, you will not come this way. I tell you to turn towards the ocean right now. I think I said it at least 2 or 3 times. Jesus probably needed only 1 time, however. The funny thing was, I found out that later, at the same exact time, our youth pastor was standing on the opposite side of the parking lot doing the exact same thing. I pulled out my weather app on my phone for the next 15 minutes and watched something unbelievable. The storm, which was originally making a beeline straight for our church, made a sudden 90-degree turn to the east and went out over the ocean. All we received at the church was a beautiful sun shower just before the event. Hundreds of new people came to the church that day for our community outreach. It couldn't have been more beautiful. So am I saying that when you know Jesus that much and operate according to the authority Jesus says we have in him, we can tell storms to move and they will? Yes, I am. All of the answers to prayer that I've seen in the past 6 years were all originally prayed because I took Jesus at his word. I didn't turn his words into some metaphor because it didn't make sense. I sought to believe them and understand them and put them into practice, which is why I'm able to tell you to pray for the impossible, the improbable, and the unlikely, and watch what happens.